everyone. Thank you again for attending the Speakers Bureau, watching us as we talk about life stories, talk about challenges, what we went through and how we got through it. As you know, for those of you that have been a part of the Speakers Bureau before, you understand that we're here to motivate, encourage, and inspire the student here in St. Lucie County, but also the entire community. We want you to know that whatever you're going through, you can make it through that. And you'll hear principles through the life stories of what it takes to get through some of those challenging times. So we have a very wonderful speaker. I'm so honored to have Mr. Sandy Woods here with us today. He's our guest. And Mr. Woods is going to share some real wisdom through his life story. I know that we've already talked a little bit about it already, and you've inspired me. So it's a mystery here, but I also get inspired by the guests that come on. And so there's a reason why I do this. It's not just for the community, it's for each and every one of us to be inspired as we move through life. So Mr. Sandy Woods, thank you so much for coming. Would you introduce yourself? One of the things that I know you for is that you own the Lexus dealership here in town, but I hear you do so much more. So would you just introduce to everyone what you do, your work?
Okay. Yeah, well, my name is Sanford Woods. My AKA is Sandy. Everybody calls me by Sandy.
I know you by, yeah.
One of my old bosses, when I was corporate, stuck me with the name, and so it stuck.
Okay, all right. Not even from birth.
No. I was actually a district manager in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and the name Sandy stuck because they didn't. Said Sanford, that's a long name. What do people call you for short? I said, well, I've been called a lot of things. They said, well, have you ever been called Sandy? I said, yep, I've been called Sandy. So it stuck.
Okay.
So my story is fairly simple. I came from a very humble beginning. My father was a janitor with an 8th grade education, and he forced me to go to college. Didn't ask, he forced. Every time I sit still long enough to listen to him, son, I want you to go to college. Son, I want you to go to college. We couldn't afford to send your other brothers to college, but I want you to go to college. So I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go to college just to shut my dad up. So I graduated from college with a degree in mathematics and a minor in business administration from Western New Mexico University. Right out of college, I was in the life insurance business. I sold life, health, and accident insurance in New Mexico. And I moved from New Mexico to Colorado in my second company for selling life insurance. And I left that company after 2 years, and I went to work for Chrysler Corporation.
So what did you do with the life insurance? I mean, you have your degree now. You have your bachelor's degree. What was your position with the life insurance that you
Well, it was interesting. In my senior year, I had done all of my electives and credits for both mathematics, and I was 9 hours away from a double major in business administration. And I took an insurance class, and I kind of liked it. And I asked a lot of questions during the class during that year, and so the guy that was teaching the class asked me, well, why don't you get into the insurance business? Okay, he offered me a trip from my first plane trip. I'd never been on an airplane before.
And how old are you at this time?
I was 22 years old.
Okay, first time.
22 years old.
Okay.
And they took me to El Paso and flew to Dallas and did a week school in Dallas and came back and I started selling life insurance.
Okay.
And after life insurance, I went to work for Chrysler in Denver, Colorado. And I moved all over from Denver to Wyoming to El Paso, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, back to Denver.
So you went to work for them doing what? Selling cars?
No, I knew nothing about cars. I've never sold a car in my life, and I've owned 13 car dealerships.
Okay. Okay.
That's odd. Everybody says,
so
well, how many cars?
Chrysler,
I
worked a car dealership.
Well, they were a car manufacturer. I worked at world headquarters at one point in time, too.
Okay.
So I went through the ranks at Chrysler. I had 14 different jobs in 16 years. And my last job at Chrysler, it was one of Lee Iacocca's premier programs. It's an interesting story. back in 1979, Chrysler was about to go broke, and the Congressional Black Caucus saved Chrysler. They voted as a bloc for the loan guarantees so Chrysler could get the $400 million to stay in business. Perrin Mitchell, who was the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, was the one that did it. And if they hadn't done it, Chrysler would have been out of business. So
Well, that's a history point there.
yes.
Yeah.
So Lee Iacocca promised Perrin Mitchell that they were going to start a program to recruit and train minority dealers. So I did that, and when I took the program over, it was $30 million upside down. It was a $150 million program. I took the program over, and lawsuits everywhere. It was a mess. So I took it over. They gave me 24 months to solve the problem. I solved the problem in 18, turned it profitable, got rid of all the lawsuits. So they gave me a dealership in Tampa, Florida. So I started, they get them to finance the whole deal and put me through that, and then I started buying dealerships and ended up with 13.
Wow. Okay.
And you want to know how I got here, right?
I want to know how you got here. Yeah. Yeah. Because you got you ended up with 13.
At 13.
Do you still have those? Or you
No.
sold some of them?
What happened in 2005, the economy was going like this. So I knew from my history in the car business that it was sooner or later it was going to downturn. And before it was 7.5 years top to bottom for good times and then bad times. So we had been going like this for 9 years, so there's only one way it could go. So I said it was time to sell. And it was mid-year, midterm elections, and at that time, all three bodies of government, the House, the Senate, and the President, were Republicans. So November of 2005, they threw the bums out. Both the House and the Senate went Democrat. So I said, we're getting ready to have a Democratic president. I thought it was going to be Hillary. It ended up to be President Obama. So I knew it was going to slide because it could only go that up for so long. It had to go down. So that's when I sold all the stores. I had stores in Atlanta, Cincinnati, Mississippi, Hilton Head, South Carolina, had 2 dealerships in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I consolidated all and made money on all of them. And I decided I was going to retire. That was one of the questions you were going to ask me.
Yes.
How
did you end up here?
Yes. Well, the way I ended up here in 2000, from 2005 to 2007, I sold all those dealerships. And so I came over here to semi-retire. And that's when I built the Lexus dealership and had sold the Toyota store prior to that, and I bought it back. And we also own the Toyota dealership, Treasure Coast Toyota in Stewart as well.
So you have the one here in Fort Pierce.
In Fort Pierce, that's
and
the Lexus
in
store.
Stewart.
And we have the Toyota store in Stewart, Florida.
Okay, okay. All right, so how has that been going?
Phenomenal.
Great.
We're doing more in 2 dealerships than I did in 13.
Really?
Yeah, by a factor of about three times.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that that's very interesting to our community that we have Black ownership with both of those businesses. Tell us about what is your philosophy in life? I mean, you've done so much. Can you relate with that question as far as your philosophy? What is your philosophy? How did you get where you are? On what belief backbone did you have for that?
Well, let me take you back to my childhood. Okay. My mother, it was really weird. When I was a kid, I'd do things that weren't supposed to be done at that age.
Okay.
And I'd tell my mother all the time, I said, well, I was really lucky. She said, son, that's not luck. She said, you're blessed. That's a gift from God. God's got a plan for you. To this day, I don't know what that plan is. We're
usually like that. Everybody else can see it, but we're still thinking it. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still trying to figure out what the plan God has for me. But a lot of it had to do with education. Getting a degree. It doesn't teach you how to do anything, but it gives you. To me, when I was corporate, I used to have to interview people all the time, and they'd always ask, well, what kind of person are you looking for this job? And for a long time, I gave them the corporate answer. We're looking for the person that represents the corporation. But I finally came to the conclusion. I said, I'm looking for somebody that can be my boss. I said, because if you're that good, how are you going to make me look? So my philosophy was to live and let live. And it held me in good stead all the way through my career, corporate-wise.
Wow, okay. I want to hear more about your childhood and your teenage years and what was that like? You know, help us understand where you come from.
Well, I was born in Arkansas, in a little small town, 8,000 people. My dad was in the military. After he got out of the military, he couldn't find a job in Arkansas, so his uncle lived in New Mexico. And he said, Dad, got plenty of jobs, come on out here. So we loaded up the truck, me and my parents and my oldest brother sat in front, and me and my other two brothers sat in the back.
So there's four?
There was four boys.
Okay.
4 boys, and my mother and father. We drove from Arkansas. My dad drove from Arkansas to New Mexico. I was 5 years old. I couldn't get into school, so I had to wait back a year because I was born in February. So I had to wait the whole year
I'm
out.
a January baby, so I get that.
So yeah, so you know you're an outlier as well.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell's
wait a
book,
little bit,
The
yeah.
Outliers. So I grew up in New Mexico, and I was somewhat of a loner when I was growing up, but I spent a lot of time with my mother. My other brothers were out in the streets and they were gone and so forth, but I spent a lot of time with my mother.
You had a younger brother and 2 older ones.
Correct.
Okay.
I was the number 3 son. So I spent a lot of time with my mother. She taught me how to cook, how to sew, how to do all the things that like that. And I excelled in school when I was in high school. I was an honor student in high school, all the way through high school. When I went to college, I was like everybody else. I didn't go to class and so forth and so on.
Really? Not like everybody's not like that. We've got kids getting ready to graduate, go to college. We don't want them to think everybody's like that.
That's an interesting story because my
But that was your mindset.
Yeah, that was my mindset. I got out from my parents and I was going to have a good time. But my last 2 years, I was on the honor roll in college, and my grandkids, they're all honor students. My oldest grandson just finished his first year at college. He's going to a business school. As a matter of fact, it's the University of Portland. And the president is an African American. And he found the campus very well, and he loves the school. And so that's the key. If you want to know my success, if I hadn't gone to school and got a degree in mathematics, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Interesting.
My father, if it hadn't been for my parents, and I had both parents at home with, and it took a lot. They drilled it into me as long as I would take it. Every night.
Sounds like me, constantly saying you got to go. You got to get you have to get your bachelor's degree at least.
At least, yes.
You know, it's not high school. And back in those days, many parents, because before them and during their time, it was hard to go to college. They had to work.
Yes.
You know, many of them could not read. And they left school in elementary school, you know, 6th graders or something like that. They had to go out to the grove or had to work and help the family.
Sure.
So it was very important back then for them to tell their children, you must finish school. But many of them stopped at the 12th grade.
Right.
But really, we must teach our children, and even if they don't go to college, they need a skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all need education, and if they become very good at that skill, then they are educating. They're getting educated. But that college degree,
the college
paper,
degree,
just having that paper.
Exactly. That's what opened the doors for me, because Chrysler would not hire anybody that didn't have a college degree.
Right.
That opened the door, and that's what got me in. You know, I developed, I tell people all the time now that everything that we do in life now is a system. It's a process. And you have to figure out the system in order to understand it. How I made my the best grades in college was I figured out how the professors adjudicated how they handled their classes. So my last 2 years, my first 2 years, I sit in the back of the class. And the professors, they think that's where all the dummies sit, in the back of the class, okay? So I figured it out. I sit in the front row, the center seat of all my classes, and the professors looked over at you and looked at all the people that were in the back. That's when I made the honor roll my last 2 years, because it was a system. Plus, you pay attention when you're sitting up front.
Yes, yes. When I went back late to college, And I started right here at IRSC when it was IRCC.
Right.
And I would sit right in the front seat, you know, in the middle,
Right.
with my recorder.
Yes.
And you're right. You pay more attention because
Exactly.
you don't. All you see is the professor. So therefore, you get more information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
That
it's
was
figuring
the
out
system.
the system.
It's the system.
And
Everything.
I graduated top honors
There you
because
go.
that's what I did.
Exactly. It's a system. In business, it's a system as well. You have to understand the system. And I've had 13 dealerships, and I've never sold a car. People say, that's great. You never sold a car? No. Here's the way I relate it. I had one of my general managers one time ask me, how do you do this? I said, look, here's the deal that you have to understand. I said, always ask your managers this question and watch their eyes when you ask the question. Do you have to know how to build a watch in order to tell time? And they'll say, no. All you have to do is how to manage the time. So you don't have to know how to build a watch. I don't have to know how to fix cars and sell cars. I manage people's time.
You've learned how to manage the business. Great. Who or what are you most thankful for?
Oh, well, it's my parents, by far. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting there talking to you today. People ask me all the time, when you were going through school, what teacher did you have that impacted you the most?
Yes, that's one of my questions.
My 5th grade teacher, his name was Mr. Falpell. And every day he'd get up and he said, okay, if you're going to go anywhere in life, you have to have a good vocabulary. In other words, you have to have a good command of the King's English. So every day he would tell us, go home tonight, get the dictionary out, pick one word, I don't care what the word is, pick the word, learn how to pronounce it, how to spell it, and how to use it in a sentence. The next day, everybody in the whole class had to get up in front of the class, say their word, spell it, tell the meaning of it, and use it in a sentence.
And that was every night?
Every day. Every day we did that in my 5th grade class.
Wow.
He said the average person has a vocabulary of 7,000 words. If you're going to get someplace in life, you need to have a vocabulary of 30,000 words.
Okay.
I still do that to this day. To this day.
Wow.
I did it this morning.
You make me want to go home and start doing that. You mean, wait, every day you actually look up a word? Is that what you're saying? You do that even after all these years?
I'm on the computer.
We're not going to ask you your age now, but you're a 5th grader when you got this, and you continued that.
This day, educate yourself. Keep educating yourself.
Well, now, when do you got where you got to today?
I get up at 4:40 every morning. I'm at my Toyota store at 6:05, and I spend 2 hours there, and then I go to my Lexus store. Then I look at my other projects.
So you see, folks, you got to really work it. It's not something that's given to any of us. We have to work diligently to get the things we want in life. And we can all have them, but we got to put the work in. And that is what Mr. Woods is saying he has done. Mr. Woods, when did you consider yourself a success?
I don't. I'm not a success.
That's a trick question.
Yeah, it is.
People usually answer just how you did.
Yeah.
Those that are successful will say, "No, I'm not a success."
No.
Tell us why you said that.
One of the things we had when I was corporate, we had some of the best speakers in the world come in and talk to us, and the one class I remember vividly, they talked about process versus program. A process has a beginning and no end. A program has a beginning and an end. I'm in a process. When I get to where I think I want to be, I have to start all over again. So I'm in a process. It's a continual education process. So the day that you think that you're done, you're done.
And usually you don't live much longer.
No. That's why I'll never retire.
Stop moving, the body starts to, Yeah,
they'll take me out feet first. I tried retirement for 1 month, and I was a miserable failure.
Oh, boy.
Miserable failure.
Oh, is that what my husband's trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to keep going.
You got to keep going.
Got to keep going. Well, you already answered some of your success habits. You get up at 4:30 in the morning, and you're out that door, and you're at that dealership by a certain time. Any other success habits that? Oh, you read that word. You could look up a new word.
Yeah, every day. My father used to always play that little game in the newspaper where you draw the names around the word. And I got into crossword puzzles. And now they have them on your on your iPhone. And so I do that every day. And every day I get a new word on the crossword puzzle, and I look that word up the next day.
Very interesting. Can you name a person who has had a tremendous impact in your life as a leader?
Sure. When I was corporate, my last job, I worked for the vice president of sales running Lee Iacocca's program, Minority Retail Dealer Development Manager. This guy was probably the smartest guy that I'd ever met in my life. His name was Tom Pappard. He recruited me for the job because I had gone through so many of the jobs. And I was in, actually my job at the time, I was assistant zone manager in Washington, D.C., our second largest sales zone. And they called me to Detroit, and he gave me the program. He's the one that told me about Perrin Mitchell and how the Congressional Black Caucus saved Chrysler and so forth and so on, and the commitment that Lee Iacocca had made to the Congressional Black Caucus. This guy was a little short, fat, bald-headed white guy. Brilliant. This guy was the smartest guy I ever met in my life. He never had notes. It was all up here. He'd pull out his beat-up Gold Cross pen, borrow a piece of paper, write stuff down, and I saw this guy just annihilate people with what he had up here. He's the guy that gave me the opportunity to become a dealer.
Okay.
And he was sharp. I mean, brilliant. Brilliant guy.
Do you also think of him as a mentor?
Oh, he was. The day he talked me into taking the job, because my next job, I was going to be a zone manager. I was going to have my own show. I've been the #2 guy in 2 different zones in Minneapolis and Washington, D.C. And I wanted to run my own show because I made all those other guys look good. It was my turn to make me look good. So he talked me into taking the job. And then after we sat down 18 months later, he gave me 24 months to fix the deal, and I fixed it in 18. And we sat down and talked, and he says, well, what do you want to do? I promise you could have your zone anywhere you want it, or you could be a dealership wherever you want it. I said, well, Tom, I said, I've always wanted to be a zone manager. He said, that's the answer I want to hear. We don't want to lose you. They were going to send me to Michigan State to get my MBA. They were giving me, it was carte blanche. And I said, Tom, I said, what you see is an aberration. He said, what do you mean? I said, look, I was competing with all those other guys, and I was the guy that got to be executive vice president. He and I got promoted 3 times on the same day. And this guy, well, he asked me to step out of line to come run this broken program. That guy had got 2 promotions. I said, Tom, I said, this guy could pick up the phone and call 10 people, and then they could say, hey, I got a problem, how do I do it? And say, oh, don't do it this way. I said, I didn't have any mentors. He looked at me like, I said, yeah, okay, Tom, you're a vice president. What would I look like picking up the phone and calling you? Don't work that way. I said, I had to make the right decisions the first time, all the time. I said, that's what you're looking at as an aberration. So yeah, he was my mentor because he told me what, how you do this, I'll do that. And we had a handshake, nothing in writing, had a handshake.
We all go through bad times. How did you push through yours?
Yeah, you're right.
Can you think of an incident or specific or just in general? How do you get through your worst times?
Well, here's what I do now. I used to act on it right then and there. Father Time tells you that you need to sleep on it. Going back to when I was a kid, when I did something, got lucky, my mother said I was blessed. The God is in your mind. So if I have a problem that I can't solve, what I typically do is I just forget about it. Sleep on it, and the answer comes to me just like that. I don't know how it happens. That's, I think, is what my mother was telling me, that I was blessed. And I have never had a major issue that I didn't my mind solved it for me. Not me. And then when it comes to me, I say, well, why didn't I think of that before? Sleep on it. Don't act in haste. I always tell people, I said, look, if it's a good deal today, it's a good deal tomorrow. It's only a good deal if you can walk away from it.
Okay. All right. What advice would you give someone that's going into a leadership position for the first time?
Do your homework. Do your homework. I get calls every day. I got 2 yesterday, people again trying to get into dealerships, and I used to run the program, so I know exactly how all that stuff works. Do your homework. You got to be educated. Do your due diligence. For example, I'll use business I'm in. I'm in the car business. The first thing that you want to do is you want to get a good attorney. You want to get a good chief financial officer. You got to have a good bank. Those are the 3 things that you got to have. Because typically when you get into business, it's not really the money, it's the time to understand and learn how to do things. My first 25 months, I lost $504,000. I came that close to going bankrupt. So do your homework, listen to the experts. The guy gave me a book when I first became a car dealer. And it was, the name of the book was Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. Because when you go into business, you're out there with the sharks.
Wow. Okay. All right. But I'm sure, even though you're out there with the sharks, it sounds like you surrounded yourself with people that can help you defend from those.
One of the chapters in the book, Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive, one of the chapters, and it was real short copies of the name of the chapter, and it said, hire an old grizzly. Now, and I said, old grizzly, what does that mean? So I read the chapter, and what it said is, find people that have done it before. The key in my business is people. And remember I told you when I used to hire people when I was corporate, I was looking for somebody that could be my boss, because if they were that smart, how good would they make me look?
Exactly.
You want to hire smart people, and then you want to develop a team. You know, I tell people all the time, the 5 worst basketball players in the world could beat Michael Jordan by himself. So you have to have a people and you have to have a team.
Very interesting. Can you repeat that book for our audience? Because that's something that I'm sure people would want to read.
I forget the name of the author, but it was when I first became a car dealer in 1989. It was called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. It's a paperback book. It's really easy to read. I read it 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Another book that I bought for all of my kids and my grandkids was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, yeah.
By Robert Kiyosaki.
That one, yes.
Yeah, it always says, never work for money, let your money work for you. Now, that's very deep, and I do that all the time now.
That's deep.
That's a PhD type stuff.
Mr. Woods, we are out of time. We are out of time already, and I'm telling you, you've had me captivated, and I'm sure you've had the audience as well that's listening to us. You've shared so much wisdom with us, and we do appreciate what you have in you, that gift that Mama talked about, because we all have our gifts.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing yours with us today.
No, the pleasure's been all mine.
All right.
Thank you.
We hope to have that you'll be willing to come on again.
Sure.
In the future, to continue to talk to us, because we need to hear from our wise older people.
Well, after I do this next project, you probably want me to come on to talk about that. It's a big one.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's bigger than anything I've ever done.
All right. Y'all heard that, right? So, Mr. Woods, he will be back on to talk about that project at a certain point in time. And thank you so much for tuning in to the St. Lucie County Public School Speakers Bureau. This is Dr. Mills, one of 5 school board members, and Superintendent Prince, Dr. Prince, is our superintendent of schools here. Thank you so much, and please tune back in again.